Hi there, Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video. Welcome to episode 93 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly series that drops every Sunday where you ask me questions in the comment section below, and every week I do my very best to answer them for you. So if you do have a question for next week's episode, please leave it in the comment section below and keep this series going. Just want to say thank you to everyone that watched the video last week and also gave it a big thumbs up. I only actually got one thumbs down on the video last week, which is pretty impressive. Maybe the trolls have got bored. Who knows? Anyway, if you do happen to enjoy this video, drop a like down below because it does really help the video and the channel. But with all that being said, let's get straight on to the first question of this week. Steve Martin says, hi Tim, Bossk and Little Boss. Quick question for next week. Do you think we will get both variants of the original 96 Bespin security guards? Keep up the amazing work. Alright, so I think now is a good time to announce a new mini-series that I'm going to be doing on the channel. It's going to be called Finish the 96. And I'm going to be going through all of the figures that basically Hasbro are still yet to do of that original 96. I'm going to be going through how I think they'll handle them from the card back image and to what figures they'll possibly use, whether they'll be repaints, resculpts, retools, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be covering maybe 5 or 6 figures in each video, and hopefully there'll be about 4 or 5 videos in the series, and we'll see how we go from there. So when it comes to the Bespin security guards, of course we did have 2 in the original 96, and those were a bit strange because one of the figures didn't really match the card back. Of course we do have the black Bespin security guard, which could be a straight repack from the Legacy collection, and then we've got the other figure that they actually had in a vintage collection 3-pack, which is the alien looking guy, and I'm not too sure if they can use him, so maybe they'll have to do a bit of a head swap to get the Asian looking fella for the original 96, but we'll just have to see how that goes. But yeah, look out for that series on the channel coming up where I'll be going through all those figures that are still to be made from the original 96. Colins Collection says, hi Tim, question for next week. Do you think Hasbro will do another Endor Commando in the more accurate uniform to include in Finish the 96, or will they count the 2 in the trench coats as job done? So that one I feel they think is done. At the end of the day, that card back is out. They've given us a Rebel Commando. So from my point of view, I think they think that that's done. Of course, we being fans of the original 96 and of course how they looked in the film, we would really want a Rebel Commando in that jumpsuit, in the green jumpsuit. Do I think that they'll do it as part of the original 96? No, I think they possibly think that they've checked that one off. Bill Paul says, Boss, question for next week. What was the one figure that really started your passion for collecting? For me, it was my 1978 C-3PO. I chose him as my first figure back then, and I've wanted more and more ever since. So to answer that question is a bit difficult because obviously when I was a child and playing with the toys, that is exactly what they were for me. They were just toys. They weren't like a thing that I collected. Of course, the more you got, the more you wanted. So I guess they became a type of collection, but I never really thought of it as that. They were more toys. When I got a bit older, of course, and I looked back to what I had, I did look at the figures that maybe I bought with my own money for the very first time, and that was definitely these two, the Luke Jedi and the Biker Scout. Me and my brother bought those on the way back from watching Return of the Jedi when I was about 7. So for me, it's those two. He was possibly the first figure that I bought again as an adult in a comic book store for about £6, I think he was. So there you go. Yeah, it's probably those two there that started it all off again. Alicio Bazan says, hello Tim, happy late birthday. Question for next week. Do you believe we will get a Kamino Clone Trooper in the Bad Batch Vintage Collection line or the 187th Mace Windu Trooper anytime? So the Kamino Clone Trooper I think is probably the best bet out of those two. It all depends on how popular the Bad Batch becomes, and of course we really do need the actual Bad Batch first, but the fact that we're getting that 4-pack is a good sign. That is the same mould that they would use for a Kamino Clone Trooper. It would just be a repaint essentially, different helmet, different paint, that kind of thing on that Clone Trooper body. We do need the Bad Batch first, and also, you know, now it's been renewed for a second season, hopefully we'll see more. The only problem that we've got is that they're a little bit late now, and next year we've got all sorts of new media and it's going to be difficult to slot these other figures in, so let's see what happens. Straight Out of Coruscant, that is a great name. Hi Tim, happy birthday. Question for next week. Do you think they'll release some Kaminoans in VC? I think there are only 2 Kaminoans in 3.75, Lama Su and Torn Wee from Attack of the Clones. Those are figures that I would love to absolutely see, but I think it bounces off the previous question. It really does depend on the success of the Bad Batch and when they can slot those kind of figures in. You know, us as collectors, we think they're no-brainers and we want them, but it's all about how they get them into the line. And as I mentioned before, with the new media that's coming on top of the second season of the Bad Batch next year, it's going to be tough for them to fill in all the gaps that we need, really. Ryan Schultz says, "Hey Tim, with collecting the original Kenner line, would you consider your collection complete if you don't have the variants? Brown-haired Luke, brown snake Yoda. I'm down to 20 left minus the variants." That's a really good question because it really does depend on the variant. I think the brown snake and orange snake Yoda would be something that I want. I'm not really too concerned about all the different hair colours of all the Luke Farm Boys and Luke Jedis. There's so many different variants, it just gets a bit out of control. When it comes to Bossk, however, I do have like a mini variant thing going on. So, for example, I have the orange head one here. That was given to me by Jay, Shake the Clone, so thank you so much for that, my friend. This one here is a mispaint without the red on his collar there. And I recently won on a Vectis auction this Bossk here. This is a graded Bossk. And this one is the no coup, so the no country of origin on the back of his leg. And the reason I got that one is because I already do have this one graded, and this one is the Hong Kong variant. Now that is getting a bit extreme, I must admit, but it is my focus character, so I do like to get as many sort of different variants as possible. You'll also see on this Bossk, his limbs are quite shiny, whereas this guy is quite matte, so you can get a lot of different variations. This one's very dark, this one's not so dark. So when it comes to Bossk, yeah, I'm all out for the variants, but all other characters, no. Just one of them will do me for my collection. Norman FD as Bellot says, "My question for next week, do you collect other lines besides Star Wars? Also, happy birthday and greeting from Honduras." Wow, that's great. Yeah, I do collect other lines, nowhere near as much as I do Star Wars. This is something that I also picked up on the Vectis auction. It's a G1 Sideswipe. The reason I picked this particular one up is because it is my favourite Transformer from when I was a kid. I had a lot of Transformers, just like I did Star Wars. They were my two main lines, along with Action Force, I guess, which is like the British G.I. Joe. But he's amazing. He's not mint in box. You can remove him. So when I get a bigger collection room, I do want to display my other lines. And I was also toying with the idea of creating a new YouTube channel called, I don't know, something like Vintage Bossk or something like that. I don't know, where maybe I show off my other vintage toys from other lines. I didn't really know whether to do it on the same channel as this one. I'm not really too sure. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about that. Do you think I should show off other things on my Bossk's Bounty channel or create a separate channel for other lines? Let me know your thoughts in the comment. Oh, and by the way, the reason I have Admiral Akbar there is because I actually met Tim Rose at the weekend. I went to the May the Toys Be With You exhibit at the Maidstone Museum. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link in the description below and a card just up there maybe, so you can watch that video. Amazing vintage items on display. Some really, really rare items. Just incredible to see in the flesh, you know. But I did meet Tim Rose and I got this signed. So he's put "It's a Trap, Admiral Akbar, Tim Rose," and that's the reissued Admiral Akbar figure there. What's that, VC22 I think it is. So that was pretty cool. Check out that video if you can. Sergio Lagrava says, "Hey BB, love your channel, keep up the great work." Thank you so much, Sergio. Question for next week: do you think we'll ever get a definitive vintage collection version of Ki-Adi-Mundi? With so many secondary Jedi that have been released and re-released, I think it's about time to get an updated figure. I couldn't agree more with you, Sergio. I would absolutely love a brand new Ki-Adi-Mundi in the vintage collection. I'm not too sure when it'll happen, but one of my favourite figures and characters is this guy, the Galactic Marine. 30th anniversary figure, stunning figure. I would love to see this guy updated and put into the vintage collection as well. And of course you've got Commander Bakara, I think it is, from that famous scene in Revenge of the Sith on the bridge where they betray Ki-Adi-Mundi and basically shoot him down like he's a piece of dirt. So yep, I would love that figure to recreate that scene on the bridge. I do have a bunch of these. I maybe have 3 or 4 of these guys, and I do believe you can get Bakara in the Legacy collection. So yeah, that would be awesome, man. I 100% agree with that one. Owen Brown says, "Hope you had a great birthday, Tim. My question for next week is, do you have any master replicas in your collection? And if not, is it a collection goal for you? Also, if they brought out a Bossk hot toy, would you be tempted to buy it? Cheers." I do not have any of those high-end toys, statues, things like that. They're not really my thing. I prefer the sort of smaller scale. Having said that, if they did bring out a Hot Toys Bossk, then of course I would not be able to resist it. And there's been a few times over the last year where I've been so tempted to pull the trigger on a hot toy. You know, you've got the Wicket and Leia that I loved. You've got the most recent Luke Jedi from The Mandalorian. And the Mandalorian himself on the Blurg, that just looks... And Queel, they'd all look fantastic. But just naming those few there, I think if I bought one, it'd be a rabbit hole that I'd go into, and you know, it's a bit expensive for me, that. Faceless Enigma 21 says, question for next week, not counting a fan vote, what do you think the chances of a Darth Plagueis Vintage Collection reissue happening at some point? I think it's likely. I mean, anything in that Black Series line I think is fair game. I've said this before. I think Hasbro will always look back to that line and dip into it. You've seen it on a few occasions. So Darth Plagueis is no exception in my book. It all just comes down to when they can do it, when they can slot it in, that kind of thing. A Kirby Mock says, happy birthday, Tim, and thanks for another great episode. Question for next week. With more whispers talk of Hasbro reducing the level of plastic within their products, how do you see them addressing the issue with future figures, Vintage Collection and the Black Series releases? Yeah, this one is a tough one. With the Black Series, I can see them going down the route that they've done with the exclusives. So the most recent one that they did for the Dave Filoni character, forgive me, I forget his name in the Mandalorian at this moment, but with that one, when you slide that figure out, there is no longer any plastic. The only problem that they've got to overcome is people like head swapping and annoying things like that. As for the Vintage Collection, if they ever change that, then I'm sorry to say the Vintage Collection essentially would be no more, because the Vintage Collection essentially reproduces how they looked back in the 70s and 80s with the card and the bubble. And if you took the bubble away, then unfortunately that way of presenting them would no longer be the Vintage Collection. And I could see 3.75 having to reimagine itself in another way, unfortunately. 2 questions about playsets here. Town Boy says, question for next week, what playset do you want to see in the Vintage Collection? Great work as always. And Deka Koi says, hey Tim, love your videos, but like to give you a what if question. If you could make a new playset for the Vintage Collection, what would it be and what figure would you put in it? Thanks, mate. Yeah, so, I mean, the obvious answer is the Mos Eisley Cantina, because obviously I just love that scene and there's so many amazing aliens and everything that we could put in it. But not to give you an obvious answer, how about the sort of deck of the Star Destroyer? I saw Daniel Chart's most recent video of the one that he made himself, and to me that just looks incredible. You could have the lineup of the bounty hunters, you could maybe pack in an Imperial officer, which we desperately need, and if it looks anything like this, these images that I'm showing you on screen right now that Daniel's created, then it would be fantastic. I mean, I very much doubt that Hasbro would do anything of this scale, but maybe just like a portion of it, maybe for the bounty hunter lineup or something. I don't know, but what's it called? Is it called the Bridge of the Star Destroyer? I think that's what it's called, yeah. So that would be fantastic. And Daniel, man, you are one talented guy. This thing looks awesome. Mighty Makoko says, question for next week. Do you think the next wave of retro collection figures will be from Return of the Jedi, Season 2 of The Mandalorian, or something else entirely? Also, do you think we could see vehicles, animals in the retro collection? Second part of that question, I hope not. I don't want the retro collection to become like an all-encompassing line where Hasbro's focus is on that. I want their focus to be on the vintage collection, if I'm brutally honest. It's just another line for them to sort of carry on with. I preferred it when it was just like a handful of figures. I have heard that the next wave will be from new media, whether that's The Mandalorian Season 2. Maybe they're saving the Return of the Jedi for the anniversary year. Milky Way Skywalker says, Tim, happy birthday. I didn't know you were so young. I'm not really. Question for next week. Which vintage collection figure would you want more at this point? The Tonica Sisters or an updated Boba Fett from Mando Season 2? Hopefully we'll get both soon. That's an easy one for me to answer, and it's kind of cheating. I would pick the Tonica Sisters all day long, and that's only because I do know that the Boba Fett from Mandalorian Season 2 or stroke Book of Boba Fett, he is definitely coming, so we don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to pick the Tonica Sisters. Playing Wookiee says, I know it's hard, but if you had to, would you choose your modern Hasbro figure collection or your vintage Kenner figures? Your channel is based on modern, but you can hear the love for the Kenner when you talk about your childhood collection. Keep it up. You are the Star Wars chosen one. Thank you, mate. Playing Wookiee. That's another good name. I like it. It is a very, very difficult question because, yes, you're right. My channel is based mainly about the modern, and I love the modern. Of course I do. I love the fact that you can get Revenge of the Sith figures on vintage cards. I love that aspect of it. But if you're going to sort of pin me down and say you've got to choose one, life or death, then it would have to be my vintage Star Wars figures, the vintage Kenner, Palatoy, whatever you want to call them, wherever you are in the world. It has to be those, because everything else after that would not exist without those. And also, there is a certain charm to them, and the collecting community around them is great, and just everything about them. The nostalgia for those is very, very big for me. So it would have to be those. But of course, as you know, I love the vintage collection a lot, and I love modern figures in general a lot. It doesn't really have to be the vintage collection. I love the legacy collection, and there's some great figures over the years. So no, but it would definitely have to be the vintage. Alright then guys, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 93 of Ask Boss Bounty. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like down below. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you've been watching the channel for a long time and you feel like you want to support me that little bit more, I do now have channel memberships activated with all sorts of perks. And of course, I still have my Patreon running as well. So thank you all for the support, and thank you very much for watching this episode. And we shall see you on the next one.